The organization just dropped the bombshell we were all waiting for. After days of uncertainty, checking the injury report and seeing our franchise quarterback on the list, wondering if our star receiver would suit up, we finally got the answers. But that's not even the whole story. Because while everyone thought Adam Peters was done making moves, turns out there's a visit on deck that could totally reshape our defensive line. And as if that wasn't enough, wait until you hear about the veteran who's about to turn back the clock in a stadium that feels like home turf. 3 explosive updates, 1 simple truth. This front office finally knows what's up. Stick around to the end, because what's coming next will blow your mind. Look, I've been covering this team for years. Years watching injuries wreck our seasons again and again. And when I saw Monday's injury report with Jaden Daniels listed as questionable, and Deebo Samuel Sr. battling that heel issue, my first thought was here we go again. But Dan Quinn just confirmed what all of DC and the whole DMV have been dying to hear. Our franchise quarterback, the guy we took with the 2nd pick in the 2024 draft, is medically cleared and ready to go. And here's the part folks are missing. It's not just about having Daniels available. Deebo Samuel Sr., our alpha in the receiving corps, the guy who's been carrying this offense on his back. While Terry McLaurin deals with a messy contract holdout, he's also fully cleared. Do you get how huge this is? Let me break down just why this update could be the difference between a legendary season and another disappointment. Let's look at the hard numbers. Veteran receiver Noah Brown, who we signed this past offseason, hasn't played since week 2. That's the whole game's out. Terry McLaurin is set to miss his 2nd straight week. And if you add up the numbers for both guys over these 4 weeks, we're talking just 13 receptions for 185 yards, 0 touchdowns. Read that again, 0 touchdowns. McLaurin on his own averaged more than that over the first 4 games last year. Here's what I'm saying. If Deebo wasn't available for the Chargers game, we'd be tossing Jaden Daniels into the fire without his deadliest weapon. Just look at the current depth chart. Luke McCaffrey has had a decent start with touchdowns in back-to-back games. And that's fine for a young guy looking to make a name. But past McCaffrey, what's there? Who else do you trust? Jalen Lane is a rookie barely familiar with Cliff Kingsbury's playbook. Chris Moore has been on the roster, but basically a non-factor, practically a ghost on the field. And check out what the organization had to do this week. They signed Robbie Chosen. Yep, the same guy who used to go by Robbie Anderson. The one who was a legit deep threat back in 2016 and 2017 with the Panthers. Since 2021, though, the guy's played just 27 games in the entire NFL. 27 games in 4 years. That's not reliable. That's pure desperation. Maybe Chosen gets a shot on Sunday at Sophie. Maybe it's finally time for Tay Martin, the journeyman who's bounced around and only caught 1 ball against Atlanta. Or who knows, maybe this is the week we finally siege Corey Brooks, the preseason standout who consistently got open, had real chemistry with Daniels, but for whatever reason has been buried on the depth chart. We just need warm bodies out there. That's the bottom line. McLaurin is out. Brown is out. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel for anyone viable. But here's the key. Having Deebo Samuel on that field is like activating cheat mode. Look at what Deebo brings. The guy leads the team this year in every major receiving category. Not 1 or 2, all of them. Catches, yards per catch, touchdowns, first downs. Add to that, he's averaging over 6.5 yards per carry when they use him in the ground game. And he's been stellar returning the ball when Kingsbury has called his number. Samuel is a true leader. His sideline energy is infectious. His toughness intimidates every defense. With all those years in San Francisco running Kyle Shanahan's complex offense, his football IQ lets him read coverages pre-snap and adjust routes on the fly. Those are precisely the traits a rookie quarterback like Daniels desperately needs. Especially now that McLaurin, his security blanket, won't be around now. Focus on this specific matchup because this is where it gets wild. Jim Harbaugh has built a Los Angeles defense that ranks 3rd league-wide in total yards allowed. And versus the pass, they are literally the best in the NFL in yards given up per attempt. That just means they're going to force us to ground and pound early and often. Samuel's blocking and rushing skill set make him a crucial component for our run game. When he's on the field, defenses can't pack the box with 8 men because they have to respect him as a receiver. That opens lanes for Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler and creates play-action opportunities that Kingsbury can exploit. But here's the tricky part. Since our secondary has struggled big time these past 4 weeks, We're probably gonna need some explosive chunk plays through the air to keep pace with Justin Herbert and his stacked set of receivers. The Chargers are dealing with their own injuries. They'll be without both Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, but they're still capable of breaking off 20-plus yard plays whenever . So what's the strategy? We want to control the ground game, drain the clock, and limit Herbert's possessions to keep our defense rested. At the same time, though, we probably need our receivers to step up and move the chains with big 15 to 20-yard gains, or else we'll get left behind on the scoreboard. That's where Samuel is absolutely irreplaceable. Without Samuel, Daniels would be forced to trust guys he just doesn't have chemistry with, players he hasn't had meaningful reps with under real pressure. Lane doesn't know the hot routes well enough yet. Moore hasn't built trust. Chosen just learned the playbook, but with Samuel out there, Daniels gets a safety net who knows exactly how to handle blitzes, who can find soft spots in zones, and who has the experience to sit in the right windows against man. That's the difference. In my book, this is the news that reshaped the odds for Sunday. Without Samuel, I had the Chargers as clear favorites by 6 to 7 points. But with Samuel ready to roll and Daniels fully cleared after a week of practice, this becomes a game we can absolutely steal on the road. Zoom out and think about the big picture. The Chargers are sitting at 3-1, feeling themselves, playing at home in Sophie in front of their crowd. Harbaugh's got them disciplined and dialed in. But we've got momentum too. We're 2-2 after a rough start, showing real resilience. And Daniels has flashed that at factor late in games. This matchup is huge for a bunch of reasons. First, it's an inter-conference game. It doesn't mess with our division chances, but it does matter for wild-card T-breakers down the road. Second, it's a massive statement opportunity on the road against a playoff-level squad. Third, it's Daniels' shot to prove he can win in hostile territory against a defense that's truly elite. Let's be real about something, too. Harbaugh's defense is no joke. This isn't a unit you just bully with talent. They roll out Joey Bosa when he's healthy. Still have Khalil Mack causing problems at 33, and Derwin James Jr. is an absolute beast. Running coverage schemes in the back end, they'll show crazy pre-snap looks. Disguise coverages, try to trip up Daniels with funky shells after the snap. And when the heat is on, when folks are guessing, having a seasoned vet like Samuel out there who sees what the quarterback is seeing, who can adjust his route on the fly, that's worth its weight in gold. So let me ask, does Samuel ball out this Sunday with a game-breaking performance? Are we talking 100-plus yards and multiple scores? Or are the Chargers gonna clamp him down with double coverage and force somebody else to step up and win? That's the chess match. If Harbaugh goes all in on stopping Samuel, can McCaffrey, Lane, or someone else answer the bell? Because that'll swing things between winning and losing. Injuries have totally ravaged our defensive line, no exaggeration. It's been a medical disaster threatening to sink our entire season. Dietrich Wise Jr., the vet rusher we brought in for steady pressure, tore his quad in week 2 versus Green Bay. Torn quad. Guys usually miss at least 8 to 12 weeks with that. Credit to the front office for moving fast. They signed Preston Smith, a super familiar face who played here from 2015 to 2018. Did solid work opposite Ryan Kerrigan. But here's the issue. Smith hasn't taken a single defensive snap. Not one. Maybe he's working back into shape. Maybe conditioning is the problem. Maybe he just hasn't learned Joe Witt Jr.'s defense quick enough. Whatever the reason is, he hasn't made an impact. And then, as if the football gods were actively trolling us, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, our 7th-round pick in the 2024 draft, a developmental prospect. We were all pumped about. He's now on IR too. Kid with a ton of athletic upside, out before he could really play. We need edge rushers. That's not opinion, that's fact. And Adam Peters, who keeps proving why the 49ers fought so hard to keep him, now has a plan. The Commanders are hosting Drake Jackson this week, the former edge from the San Francisco 49ers, who missed all of 2024 with a torn patellar tendon. And let me be perfectly clear, that's one of the nastiest, most career-altering injuries an athlete can get. The same thing nearly ended Victor Cruz's career. It completely derailed Zach Menberger. It demands immediate surgery, months of brutal rehab, and a mental grind that breaks a ton of guys. Jackson spent almost a full year wondering if Pro Bowl would ever be possible again. 2 years of doubts, pain, and dark moments where quitting probably started to look like an option. But the kid proved he's got insane mental toughness, a drive that separates stars from the rest, and finally, he's been medically cleared. let's revisit his history in San Fran, because there's context here. He was a second-round pick back in 2022, coming out of USC at 61 overall. The Niners saw him as a high upside, explosive edge with natural bend and a nasty first step. In 23 games across 2 years, he put up 6 sacks, a bunch of QB hits, flashed as a disruptive pass rusher. His second year was trending up before that brutal injury ripped it all away. He was getting better at running defensive stunts, started adding powerful counters to his toolbox to pair with his initial burst. Then, boom, one play and it's over. But here's where it gets very intriguing. Adam Peters was in that Niners front office. From 2017 through 2023, HE was in the war room evaluating Jackson before the draft. HE was there for conversations about Jackson's upside. He probably heard all about the kid's drive, his work ethic, his mindset. He has insider info on Jackson that no other GM in the league has. See the edge that gives us. While the Jets and Ravens, who also have meetings with Jackson, are working off tape and medicals, Peters can literally call up Kyle Shanahan, ask directly, does this kid still have it? Talk to trainers who ran his rehab. He can pull real intel others would pay millions for. Here's the honest truth. We don't know how close Jackson is to his pre-injury form. Patellar tendons are tricky. Some dudes like Ronnie Stanley come back and almost look like themselves someday. Others, they never get back that special first step. They develop bad compensations and become injury-prone. But here's why this is a no-brainer. What's the real risk? Jackson's coming in on a likely 1-year, prove-it deal for something like the veteran minimum. We're talking less than $1 million against the cap. Literally no financial risk to a front office with space to spare. Look at our current depth behind Dorrance Armstrong and Jacob Martin. Who's started to weeks for Wise? Just Preston Smith, who hasn't played, and Jalen Holmes, who's a solid backup but not someone you trust for 40-plus snaps a game. The opportunity is wide open for Jackson to come in and carve out a role. If he can even put up 70 to 80% of his pre-injury play, that's a massive boost over what we've got at the moment. The Jets and Ravens are in the mix. But our connection to Peters, Jackson's direct experience with him, the trust and relationships, that's a real advantage. Look, I get the skepticism. I really get it. 2 years gone is a long time. Muscle atrophies. Instincts lag. Gaining trust in that knee for planting and exploding will take time to build back. But the guy is just 24. This should be his athletic prime. He isn't some 30-plus vet milking a few last paydays. He's a young guy who lost key development years to bad luck, and yet, our D-line, through all these injuries, has actually been a pleasant surprise. Dorrance Armstrong has been strong pressuring the QB. Darren Payne inside has been a monster against the run and getting interior pressure. Javon Kinlaw, when healthy, has flashed real disruptive ability, which the Niners expected when they drafted him. Still, we need more bodies, more fresh legs, more depth so guys aren't dead by the fourth quarter when games are decided. At the very least, Jackson's signing would be a heck of a feel-good story. A young player who refused to quit, ground through brutal rehab, and now gets a second shot at proving he still belongs. That sort of comeback fires up a locker room, pushes others to work harder, but potentially, this could be so much more. If Peters sees something in Jackson's medicals, if his inside info says this kid can truly come back and contribute, then this is the perfect case of a low-risk, high-reward move, the kind that separates elite franchises from the clueless ones. Because here's the real difference. While Jerry Jones in Dallas is out here signing big names like Ezekiel Elliott, who are long past their primes and cashing in on the glory days, Peters is hunting value where others aren't even looking. He's betting on overlooked talent, on guys hungry to prove they deserve a shot. While Roseman in Philly shells out big cash for proven vets to push all in on a Super Bowl run, risking the future, we're building depth smartly, steadily, finding contributors in the late rounds and picking up overlooked free agents who fit our scheme. In my opinion, this is the kind of move that will set this front office apart from those old miserable regimes. We aren't chasing ESPN headlines. We aren't trying to win the offseason with flashy signings that look good but never pan out. We're building to win games. That's it. So here's my question. Do you believe Jackson can get back to even 80% of his old self? Or do you think 2 years out, especially after an injury like that, is just too much to come back from? Let me know. Let me know. Look, Von Miller hasn't been putting up crazy stats through for weeks. Let's be real, just 7 total pressures and 1.5 sacks on the year isn't head-turning stuff like Miller in his Denver prime 7 or 8 years ago. but discounting him based only on stats would be a huge mistake, especially since the Commanders are heading into SoFi Stadium for a showdown with the Chargers. And here's why: this matchup, in this specific stadium, is exactly where Miller could remind us all why he's a lock for Canton. With the Chargers scrambling to patch together their offensive line after the huge injuries, Miller's about to get the sort of chance that a savvy vet like him can absolutely feast on. Trey Pipkins III will be protecting Herbert's blind side. And even though Pipkins has made some steady growth in the last couple of years, he still struggles against speed 2 power edge rushers and against wily vets who know all the tricks. And guess what? Miller's got every trick in the book. Pipkins hasn't exactly been steady so far in 2025. He's given up 16 total pressures and 163 pass pro snaps according to PFF. That's about 1 pressure every 10 snaps, which isn't terrible, but it's nowhere close to elite. And that's exactly the type of matchup that Miller's made a living exploiting. Throughout his career, Miller at 36 isn't just sprinting around guys on pure speed the way he did in 2012 through 2015. Those days are over. His first step isn't as electric, his arc bend isn't as sharp. But now, the craftiness, perfect timing, ability to read a tackle set before he even finishes his kick slide, that's all still there. And honestly, that matters more now than just being fast. If Miller can bait Pipkins into leaning forward expecting a bull rush, or open his hips too soon thinking it's pure speed, then Miller can convert what burst he has left into leverage and flatten out straight to Herbert. A sack isn't always about who's the fastest or strongest. Lots of times, it's about who's smarter, who's got better anticipation, who makes the blocker commit first. But there's even more to this story: the stadium and history itself. SoFi Stadium is where Miller had one of the defining stretches of his entire career. After being traded from Denver to the Rams in November 21, he was huge in pushing that team over the top for Super Bowl 56. He played on that same field where will be Sunday, made clutch plays in the NFC title game, then completely took over the Super Bowl to win his second ring. That stadium, those Injoni logos, that whole scene, it triggers something you can't really measure, but it's real and shows up on Sundays with the greats. Even last year, when Miller went back to places linked with his biggest moments, there were clear spikes in his energy and production in those games. That extra spark popped back up in Week 3 this year against the Raiders in Allegiant Stadium. His body language was different. The urgency from the snap was obvious. His finishing moves looked vintage. His eyes were lit up. His step had real juice. You could tell the big stage and the rivalry sparked his best. And now, this week, it's another AFC West foe, in a stadium forever linked to one of Miller's greatest career highs. The Chargers were Denver rivals during his 9 years in his prime. He knows the franchise, knows the AFC West style, and now gets a shot at making a legacy play on what's basically his second home turf. The Chargers' O-line is still adjusting after losing both Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. New pieces, chemistry issues, protection calls still coming together. All that opens up stress points that veteran edge rushers can target. If Washington's D-line can generate even decent push inside from Darren Payne or Jonathan Allen, it'll force Herbert to step up, and that's how the edge guys get their clean-up shots. Miller's 1.5 sacks prove he's still cashing in when the window's open. He isn't squandering his chances. If Pipkins is gassed in the fourth quarter after 60-plus snaps, just one or two big moments might be all Miller needs to kill a late-game drive. Washington doesn't need Miller to have some old-school, 10 pressure, 3 sack kind of day. We don't need the 2015 MVP version. All we need is a perfectly timed sack on third and long to force a punt, a clutch QB hit to knock down a pass late in the half, or a protection shift that frees up Armstrong or Martin to make a play. That, right there, can be a massive difference in a game bound to come down to a possession or two. Here's the deal. While the Giants are flailing around looking for a single consistent rusher after letting Leonard Williams walk and watching Kayvon Thibodeau struggle, and the Cowboys are hanging everything on Parsons because their depth is scary thin, we've got a Super Bowl champ, a future Hall of Famer, a veteran with more playoff experience than our whole roster put together, ready to make a statement on enemy turf. With the Commanders desperate for a huge road win, a win that proves Dan Quinn and Adam Peters are truly building something different than all the miserable versions. Before our defense needs a playmaker, a spark, a moment to ignite the whole squad. And Miller is exactly the type of vet who can provide it. Even if it doesn't show up with flashy numbers after for weeks, intangibles matter. Experience in big games matters. Having been there before, knowing how to handle pressure matters. And Miller's got all that in spades. This is the type of game where experience and the moment collide perfectly. Miller at Sophie against the Chargers in an AFC West-style slugfest that he's all too familiar with everything on the line in terms of showing the league we're real. If there's ever a time for the vet to remind us why he was an absolute force of nature for a decade, it's now. It's this game, this moment. So let me ask, does Miller unleash a game-wrecking performance this Sunday? That swings the whole outcome for us. Or are people sleeping on just how much damage a super-motivated veteran can inflict when everything lines up just right? Let's run it back. Daniels and Samuel fully cleared, locked and loaded for the fight. Jackson in town, potentially shoring up our D-line. Miller, ready for one of those career-defining moments at Sophie. 3 stories. 1 message. This franchise finally has a direction, the leadership, and a plan. Are you ready to see if all this turns into a win in Los Angeles? Because I guarantee tomorrow we'll have even more fireworks for this team. You do not want to miss what's coming. Let me know in the comments, which of these 3 updates pumps you up the most? Is it our offensive stars coming back? The possible Jackson signing? Or do you think Miller will be the X factor this Sunday? And if you believe this organization is finally getting it right, if you believe Peters and Quinn are building something legit, make sure you join this family. Subscribe to the channel because the Burgundy Nation is growing fast. You don't want to be left behind. Smash LIKE if you believe Samuel will get over 100 yards this Sunday. Hit subscribe if you trust Miller to grab a crucial sack. And drop a comment on which player you've got pegged as our MVP against the Chargers. This is our shot to prove the Commanders aren't just back, we're here to stay.